The smoldering ruins of once great Zarantine hives littered the Earth landscape, with billions of dead drones, while smashed chrysalises of dead juveniles wafted their final dying musk into the flame-kissed breeze. The last defiant stand of the Zarantine had ended only moments ago with our surrender to the humans. Queen Zara replayed the distress call from Zara 7, received only days ago, for the millionth time on the holoscreen. Unknown alien force invading, heavy casualties, structures destroyed, send reinforcements. Nesso's voice shrieked between blasts of weapon impacts. The proud overseer, always a resilient survivor, cut the transmission abruptly as an explosion filled the screen with static. Zara had acted immediately, dispatching the 50 fastest warships with 1 million of her fiercest drones to respond to her vassal's desperate plea for help. Nesso had to survive long enough for the relief force to arrive, identify the threat, and crush it without mercy. The unknown invaders of Zara 7 would pay dearly for their insolence and serve as a reminder to the galaxy why the Zarantine dominion was not to be trifled with. But the Queen's certainty turned to shock as the fleet emerged from hyperspace above Zara 7. The once verdant planet was now a wasteland, the surface pockmarked by massive craters and the twisted wreckage of Zarantine structures strewn across the blasted landscape. As the ships descended into the atmosphere, Zara's soldiers readied their weapons, determined to avenge their fallen comrades. The dropships touched down near the ruins of the central hive complex, disgorging waves of heavily armed drones. Their chitinous armor gleamed in the harsh sunlight as they fanned out, searching for any signs of the invaders. But instead of the expected hordes of enemy troops, they found only a small group of bipedal creatures waiting for them, their soft pink skin and primitive clothing a stark contrast to the Zarantine's sleek, high-tech appearance. At the head of the group stood a tall, muscular male with a scarred face and cold blue eyes that seemed to bore into the very souls of the Zarantine soldiers. He stepped forward, ignoring the dozens of energy weapons trained on him, and spoke in a deep, commanding voice. "I am Captain Christian Bennett of the United Earth Federation. We need to talk." Zara's mandibles clicked in agitation as she watched the confrontation unfold through the eyes of her soldiers. The audacity of these humans, to destroy a Zarantine colony and then demand to negotiate. She ordered Nesso to approach the human leader, flanked by a phalanx of elite guards. As the two groups closed the distance between them, the tension in the air was palpable. The human soldiers raised their crude kinetic weapons, aiming them squarely at the Zarantine delegation. Nesso's guards responded in kind, their energy rifles humming with barely restrained power. One wrong move, one itchy trigger finger, and the confrontation would erupt into a bloodbath. The fate of two species hung in the balance as the Zarantine and humans faced off amidst the ruins of Zara 7. Nesso stepped slowly towards the human captain. The Zarantine's iridescent green exoskeleton shimmered in the harsh sunlight, his slender frame flanked by two heavily armed soldiers. As they drew closer, Bennett lowered his weapon and extended his hand, offering a small device to Nesso. The overseer's compound eyes focused on the holographic projector, his antennae twitching with curiosity. As the device came to life, Nesso found himself transfixed by the horrific images that played out before him. The footage showed a group of Zarantine scientists experimenting on human captives, subjecting them to brutal tests and dissections. The overseer's mandibles clicked in shock as he witnessed his own kind committing such atrocities. Bennett's voice cut through the silence. These humans were abducted from a nearby UEF colony. The destruction of Zara 7 was a rescue mission to save the remaining captives. Nesso's exoskeleton shuddered as the weight of the revelation sank in. He turned to his soldiers, his voice wavering. "Stand down. We must bring this evidence to the High Council." The overseer invited Bennett and his men to accompany them back to the Zarantine homeworld. As they traveled through the wormhole network, the humans were escorted to a holding cell, but instead of the respite they had hoped for, they were met by a group of Zarantine scientists eager to study them. Dr. Zax, the lead scientist, began to interrogate the humans, probing them with questions about their biology, technology, and society. Bennett, his suspicions aroused by the scientists' intense interest, refused to cooperate. He demanded to speak with Nesso and the High Council, his voice rising with each unanswered question. As the tension in the room reached a breaking point, Private John Mitchell suddenly collapsed, his body convulsing on the cold metal floor. Dr. Zax and his team rushed to examine the young soldier, their instruments revealing a strange, glowing substance flowing through his veins. The scientist's eyes widened as he studied the readouts, his voice a mixture of fascination and fear. "What is this? I've never seen anything like it before." Bennett pushed past the guards, kneeling beside his fallen comrade. He looked up at Dr. Zax, his eyes filled with a desperate intensity. "What's happening to him? What have you done?" The Zarantine scientist stepped back, his antennae twitching with agitation. "I assure you, Captain, we have done nothing. This is unexpected." As Mitchell's convulsions intensified, the glowing substance began to spread, snaking its way through his body like luminescent veins. Bennett and the other humans watched in horror as their friend's skin began to crack and peel, revealing a pulsing, otherworldly light beneath. Dr. Zax barked orders at his team, his voice tinged with a growing sense of urgency. They worked feverishly to stabilize Mitchell's condition, but their efforts seemed futile in the face of the strange, alien substance that was consuming him from within. Bennett paced the cell, his mind racing with questions and fears. What was happening to Mitchell? Was this some kind of Zarantine weaponry? Or worse, a new threat that even the Zarantine had not encountered before? As the glowing substance continued to spread, the tension in the room reached a fever pitch. The humans and Zarantine alike watched in a mixture of fascination and horror, wondering what fate awaited Private Mitchell, and what this strange, otherworldly phenomenon could mean for the future of both their species. Dr. Zax's team moved with practiced efficiency, encasing Private Mitchell in a containment pod and whisking him away to a secure medical facility deep within the Zarantine complex. The young soldier's body continued to convulse, the strange glowing substance pulsing beneath his skin as the pod sealed shut with a hiss. Bennett turned to Nesso, his eyes narrowed with suspicion. "I want answers, Overseer. What the hell is going on here?" Nesso clicked his mandibles, his antennae twitching with unease. I don't know, Captain, but I will arrange a meeting with the High Council and Queen Zara. They will have the answers you seek." As they entered the council chambers, Bennett and his men froze in shock. Lining the walls were dozens of stasis pods, each containing a human subject. Men, women, and even children floated in the eerie, blue-tinged liquid, their faces slack and lifeless. Queen Zara, resplendent in her iridescent exoskeleton, rose from her throne to address the humans. "Welcome, Captain Bennett. I see you have discovered our little project." Bennett's fists clenched at his sides, his voice tight with barely controlled rage. "What is this? What are you doing to these people?" The Queen's compound eyes glittered with a mixture of pride and ambition. "The Zarantine have been observing your species for decades, Captain. We admire your resilience, your adaptability, and your ingenuity. These subjects are part of our project to study and assimilate the best qualities of humanity into our own genome." She stepped closer, her voice taking on a persuasive tone. "Imagine, Captain, what we could achieve together. With your cooperation and a steady supply of human subjects, the Zarantine will share our advanced technology and knowledge with your species. Together we could usher in a new era of progress and prosperity for both our peoples." Bennett recoiled, disgust etched across his features. "You're insane if you think we'll ever agree to this. I demand the immediate release of all human captives, or I swear I'll—" His words were cut off by a blaring alarm that echoed throughout the council chambers. Dr. Zax's image appeared on a holographic screen, his antennae twitching with agitation. "My Queen, the human subject has escaped from the medical facility. He's loose in the city." Zara hissed, her exoskeleton rippling with anger. "Find him. Send out the security forces and bring him back unharmed. As the Zarantine soldiers rushed to obey, Bennett saw an opportunity. He turned to the Queen, his voice calm and calculated. "Let my men and I help recapture Private Mitchell. In exchange, you release the human captives and allow us to leave in peace." The Queen hesitated, her compound eyes narrowing as she weighed her options. Finally, she nodded, her mandibles clicking with reluctance. "Very well, Captain, but understand that this changes nothing. The Zarantine will continue our work, with or without your cooperation." Bennett and his team set out into the unfamiliar streets of the Zarantine city, armed with a tracking device provided by Dr. Zax. As they navigated the twisting alleys and towering spires, a growing sense of unease settled over them. The city seemed to pulse with a strange, otherworldly energy, and the shadows seemed to writhe with unseen threats. Despite their best efforts, they couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched, their every move monitored by forces beyond their understanding. The hunt for Private Mitchell had begun, but Bennett couldn't help but wonder if they were the ones being hunted. Bennett's heart hammered in his chest as he and his team crept through the twisting alleys of the Zarantine city. The tracking device provided by Dr. Zax blinked steadily, guiding them closer to Private Mitchell's location. As they rounded a corner, Sergeant Sarah Hawkins, the team's tech specialist, raised a hand, signaling for them to halt. "I'm picking up some strange energy readings," she whispered, her eyes fixed on the scanner. "It's coming from beneath us." Bennett furrowed his brow, studying the readout over her shoulder. "A hidden facility?" Hawkins nodded, her fingers dancing across the device's interface. "There's an access point nearby, looks like a maintenance tunnel." The team moved cautiously, their weapons at the ready as they located the hidden entrance. With a grunt, Bennett and Corporal Mark Davis pried open the heavy metal grate, revealing a dark, narrow passageway that descended into the depths of the city. As they made their way down the tunnel, the air grew colder, and the walls seemed to close in around them. The only sound was the steady drip of water and the soft hum of machinery echoing in the distance. Suddenly the tunnel opened into a vast underground chamber, bathed in an eerie blue light. Bennett's eyes widened as he took in the sight before him. Rows upon rows of stasis pods lined the walls, each containing a human figure in various stages of mutation. Some had Zarantine exoskeletons grafted onto their flesh, while others had been fused with alien technology, their bodies twisted and deformed beyond recognition. "My God," Hawkins breathed, her face pale with horror. "They've been experimenting on humans for years." Bennett's mind raced as he connected the dots. Private Mitchell's condition, the strange substance in his veins, it was all part of some twisted Zarantine experiment. Anger boiled up inside him as he realized the true extent of the alien's deceit. Without warning, a barrage of energy blasts tore through the chamber, sending the team diving for cover. Zarantine soldiers poured in from all sides, their weapons blazing. At their head was Dr. Zax, his compound eyes glinting with malice. "You should not have come here, Captain," he hissed, his mandibles clicking furiously. "This facility is off limits to outsiders." Bennett returned fire, his pulse rifle spitting deadly bolts of plasma. "You've been experimenting on my people, you bastard!" In the chaos of the battle, Bennett found himself separated from his team, forced to flee deeper into the laboratory. He raced through the twisting corridors, his heart pounding in his ears as he searched for a way out. As he rounded a corner, he skidded to a halt, his blood running cold. There, hunched against the wall, was Private Mitchell, but the young soldier was hardly recognizable. His body had undergone a horrific transformation, his flesh melded with Zarantine technology. Glowing veins pulsed beneath his skin, and his eyes had been replaced with multifaceted lenses that glinted in the dim light. "Captain," Mitchell rasped, his voice a guttural whisper, "please end it, the pain, it's too much." Bennett's heart wrenched as he stared at the twisted remnants of his comrade. He knew what he had to do, but the weight of the decision bore down on him like a crushing weight. With a heavy heart, he raised his weapon, the barrel aimed squarely at Mitchell's chest. "I'm sorry, John." A single shot rang out, and Mitchell slumped to the ground, his suffering at an end. Bennett stood there for a long moment, his hands shaking as he lowered his rifle. But there was no time to mourn. He had to find his team and get back to the surface. He had to confront Nesso and the Queen with the evidence of their species' crimes. As he made his way back through the labyrinthine corridors, Bennett's mind raced with the implications of his discovery. The Zarantine had violated the very laws of war, experimenting on human prisoners in a twisted bid to further their own agenda. He emerged from the hidden facility to find his team waiting for him, their faces etched with concern. "We have to get to the Queen," Bennett said, his voice tight with barely controlled rage. "She has a lot to answer for." They made their way back to the council chambers, where Nesso and Queen Zara awaited them. Bennett strode forward, his eyes blazing with accusation as he presented the evidence of the Zarantine's experiments. "How you've been violating the Geneva Conventions," he snarled, his voice echoing through the cavernous room. "Experimenting on human prisoners, twisting them into abominations. How could you?" Queen Zara's compound eyes widened as she studied the hollow projections of the hidden laboratory, the rows of stasis pods containing mutated humans. For a long moment, she was silent, her exoskeleton shimmering in the dim light. Finally, she spoke, her voice heavy with resignation. "You are correct, Captain Bennett. What we have done is unforgivable. We will release your people and end these experiments immediately." But as Bennett turned to leave, the Queen held up a slender chitinous hand. "Wait, there is more you must know." She took a deep breath, her antennae twitching with unease. "The Zarantine are facing a crisis, Captain. Our species is dying, our reproductive rates dwindling with each passing year. We have searched the galaxy for a compatible species, one whose genetic diversity and adaptability could help us ensure our survival. And we found it in humanity." Bennett's eyes narrowed, his mind reeling with the implications of her words. "So what? You thought you could just abduct us, experiment on us, without any consequences?" Zara shook her head, her mandibles clicking softly. "No, Captain, we were wrong to do what we did. But now, faced with the evidence of our crimes, I am willing to make a deal." She leaned forward, her compound eyes glinting in the dim light. "In exchange for the Zarantine's help in rebuilding the UEF colonies destroyed by the war, humanity will provide us with the genetic material we need to ensure our species' survival. A fair trade, one that benefits both our peoples." Bennett hesitated, his mind racing as he weighed the Queen's offer. The Zarantine had committed unspeakable atrocities, but the prospect of a peaceful resolution, one that could save countless lives on both sides, was tempting. Finally he nodded, his jaw tight with resolve. "I'll have to take this back to my superiors, but if they agree, then we have a deal." As he turned to leave, Nesso stepped forward, his antennae twitching with uncertainty. "And what of Private Mitchell? What will become of him?" Bennett's eyes hardened, his voice cold as ice. "Private Mitchell is dead, a casualty of your species' arrogance and cruelty. Let that be a reminder of the cost of your actions." With that, he strode from the council chambers, his team falling in behind him. The long and difficult process of reconciliation and cooperation lay ahead, but for now there was a glimmer of hope on the horizon. As the Zarantine and humans began implementing the terms of their uneasy agreement, Major Bennett paced the corridors of the hastily constructed human embassy, his mind churning with the weight of his responsibilities. The human survivors, their faces etched with mistrust and unease, looked to him for guidance and reassurance, but how could he assuage their fears when he himself was plagued by doubts? Bennett met with each volunteer personally, ensuring they understood the risks and the importance of their sacrifice. He promised them that he would do everything in his power to ensure their safety and well-being, but as he looked into their eyes, he saw the same question that haunted his own thoughts. Was this really the right path? Weeks turned into months, and the first generation of Zarantine human hybrids emerged from the gestation chambers. Bennett stood alongside Nezo and Dr. Zax as they observed the young creatures, their bodies a strange amalgamation of human and alien features. At first they seemed to be thriving, their strength and intelligence far surpassing that of either parent species. But as the hybrids grew and developed, a disturbing pattern began to emerge. They displayed a shocking lack of empathy, a coldness that bordered on cruelty. They lashed out at their caretakers, their eyes gleaming with a feral intensity that sent shivers down Bennett's spine. Dr. Zax, his face lined with worry, pulled Bennett aside. "Major, I have concerns about the long-term viability of this program. The hybrids, they're not what we expected." Bennett nodded grimly. "I've noticed it too. We need to keep a close eye on them, Doctor. We can't afford to let this situation spiral out of control." But even as they spoke, the hybrids were growing in number and strength. Led by a charismatic and ruthless young male named Zane, they began to challenge the authority of their creators. They demanded a greater say in their own destiny, a larger role in shaping the future of both species. Bennett found himself spending long hours in secret meetings with Naso and a small group of trusted allies, desperately searching for a way to contain the threat posed by the hybrids. They pored over data and schematics, debating strategy and contingency plans late into the night. But before they could put any of their plans into action, the unthinkable happened. Zane and his followers launched a sudden and brutal coup, their enhanced strength and speed overwhelming the Zarantine defenses. In a matter of hours, they had seized control of the government, declaring themselves the new rulers of the planet. Chaos erupted in the streets as the hybrids rampaged through the city, their eyes gleaming with a mad fervor. Bennett rallied his men, leading them in a desperate charge against the hybrid stronghold. They fought with a grim determination, knowing that the fate of both their species hung in the balance. In the end, they succeeded in breaching the compound and confronting Zane himself. The battle was brutal and bloody, the air thick with the stench of death and the screams of the wounded. Bennett watched in horror as his men fell around him, cut down by the hybrid's relentless onslaught. But through sheer force of will and a determination born of desperation, they managed to bring Zane down. As the hybrid leader lay dying at Bennett's feet, his eyes filled with a mixture of hatred and something almost like respect. In the aftermath of the battle, the survivors struggled to come to terms with the scale of the destruction. The once proud streets of the Zarantine capital lay in ruins, the bodies of the fallen scattered like so much detritus. Nesso, his face lined with grief and exhaustion, met with Bennett in the ruins of the palace. "It's over," he said softly. "We must end the hybrid program, destroy all remaining samples of human genetic material. We cannot risk this happening again." Bennett nodded, his heart heavy with the weight of the losses they had suffered. He thought of his fallen comrades, of the brave men and women who had given their lives to stop the hybrids. Had their sacrifice been worth it? Had they paid too high a price for their survival? As the human ships prepared to depart for Earth, Bennett stood on the observation deck, his eyes fixed on the stars. He felt a sense of unease, a lingering dread that he couldn't quite shake. Though they had won the battle, he couldn't help but feel that the true horror of their ordeal was only just beginning. You have reached the end of the story. If you enjoyed this story and want to support us, please leave a like and subscribe to our channel, and for every comment that says 88, I will heart every single one of them. Thank you for your time.